Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, is Luka. Luka, we say we will get an episode out anytime there's breaking news. And holy cow, Luka, this is not what the episode's going to be about. Please don't turn it off. The Bills have hired former Carolina Panthers NFC Championship head coach John Fox to their coaching staff as an assistant coach. We'll talk about that in a second. But how the hell are you?
I'm doing good. We are officially beginning season 5 of Bill's Chat podcast now that we have turned the page. The Super Bowl has been played. The NFL season will be turning to the new 2026 league year, and we are doing the same with our own podcast. It feels good. For the fun transparency note, we are once again recording on a Friday. Love that as the week wound down and we're entering the weekend, and you are all listening to us most likely to begin your following week. Welcome. But I'm doing good. You know, we are officially in the future look of the NFL and the Bills, and the John Fox news is just I would love to know, as a betting man, what the odds would have been going into the 2026 NFL season that John Fox would be employed in the NFL. It doesn't need to be anything specific, just literally employed. I want that it would have to be 10,000 to 1 odds. I mean, you made a joke that I don't think we need to make a joke on air. It wasn't insensitive or anything like that, but it was funny.
I thought he was dead. There's my joke. I mean, it wasn't a joke. I'd be like, you could have told me he was dead and I'd have believed you.
Yeah, he has fallen off the face of the earth, and all of a sudden here we are. John Fox is going to be an individual sitting in coaches meetings and discussing things among Joe Brady and the rest of the staff. And we can obviously give our 2 cents on that, but no, that won't be what this entire episode is. As more so, we are looking to look forward to the 2026 season as we have a long offseason ahead of us.
Yeah, and just quickly on this Fox thing, I think when Joe Brady was announced as head coach, my immediate thought was, okay, I would like to see him get a defensive coordinator that has head coaching experience, sort of the Wade Phillips to Sean McVay when he got hired with the Rams, because in a lot of ways, Wade Phillips helped groom Sean McVay just on the day-to-day of being a head coach that you can't be ready for until you go through it. Well, ultimately, the Bills hired Jim Leonard. Nobody's unhappy about that. But one thing he didn't have was NFL head coaching experience. And then obviously, Pete Carmichael on the offensive side doesn't have NFL head coaching experience. They lost Aaron Kromer. A lot of experience goes out the door there. So on the surface, I think no harm, no foul. It makes sense for John Fox to essentially be a sounding board for Joe Brady. We can have our jokes about the Carolina pipeline, and I don't think, folks, that John Fox is going to be the one on Wednesday that's like, okay, here's our fourth and go for it situations. Here's what he's not going to be running the analytics department. I mean, I can put those fears at ease. Honestly, I think I don't want to steal your thunder. You said it off the air. I'll kind of let you say it for the folks that are listening. I agree 100%. I think this hire is as much for Joe Brady and his psyche and his like weekly check-in, how am I doing, John, as it is about like NFL strategy.
Yeah, when you really want to try to wrap your head around why did they, get John Fox out of the retirement home to come and sit and be a part of this coaching staff in whatever capacity it is, and the thought of John Fox being, as he's labeled, a senior assistant. So an individual who will be just sitting in the coaches' meetings and things of that nature that could be leaned on, ask questions of, things like that, be an added resource for, obviously his lengthy experience in the NFL, dating back all the way to 1989 when he was a DB's coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers, through just things that Joe Brady may have questions about, or Jim Leonard may have questions about on the day-to-days. And he can be like, hey, tap on the shoulder. Joe, I know you want to be buddies with everyone. That would probably be a moment that I would be a little bit more tough on my players and make sure it's understood. I am the head coach. You are a player, within this organization that I am in charge of, things like that. It's trying to have that balance and understand where that balance can be the player's coach and the friend, and other times where you need to be the head ball coach. And then from there with, like a Jim Leonard situation, if he's starting to not figure out his DC ways and is struggling to understand maybe how to get through to players, and is noticing, let's just for example's sake, say the Wednesday meetings or whatever it is are just not, the walkthroughs are not going the way that he would like them to. John Fox could be a guy that he can lean on and just ask, hey, what did you find was successful in accomplishing this? What do you believe? And then even on top of it, if it is like something's going on that Jim Leonard just wants to hear another voice chime in and stuff, that piece of information could reside within someone with a lot of experience being in the building. That is John Fox. I mean, there is a lot of jokes to be had with John Fox. He had a very long, extensive head coaching time in the NFL. He obviously even longer as just a coach or assistant around NFL teams. Knowledge is knowledge. And on top of it all, the cherry on top, the one point I have is the NFL seems to be moving in a direction where it's forward thinking, the new age coach, the new age thought process, the way you handle players, which it does need to evolve. I mean, you see it in all sports, you see it in hockey, everything, so on and so forth. But having that quote unquote old head in the room to maybe balance things, or even just lean on to bring a little bit more of the tough love insight or anything of that such, is not a negative thing either. I think there is a healthy balance that needs to be had so that you can have and reach a level of success with your players, both on and off the field, so that things are getting through to them clearly. And it's also understood who you are and what your responsibilities are. And then also you're comfortable within those when it comes to a coaching perspective. So I'm not going to sit here and say I love it or hate it. It's just, it is what it is. But it's not like joke worthy or anything like that. I don't think anyone would even have that reaction. I haven't even been on, Twitter/X to see kind of if there's any been funny memes that have been posted about it or whatever. But I think there's value that can come with having a guy like John Fox in the room, just as a bouncing board, as you said, or just as someone that you can just utilize as another first person asset, and a resource of information to kind of be more comfortable within your position, whether it's Joe Brady, Jim Leonard, or any other coach in that room. He's someone that absolutely has a wealth of information that can provide, and is clearly going to now be on the payroll to do so with anyone that asks.
So John Fox is a Buffalo Bill, and it makes sense. We'll see what happens going forward. It's senior coaching assistant, so they didn't even assign him a side of the ball. So I mean, that to me again tells me it is a Joe Brady hire, and for Joe Brady's psyche. All right, for the topic at hand, as we are now. You're listening to this probably on President's Day. Hope you all had a good Valentine's Day. But as we get to mid-March, we start getting closer to the combine, start getting closer to free agency. Luka, it appears that at least on the surface, that the common thought both about this upcoming free agent class and this upcoming draft class is underwhelming. And I think that's why you're seeing guys like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport speculate that a lot of trades could be made this offseason. And one of the biggest stories for the Bills this season were trades that weren't made at the trade deadline. So what I have come up with is I have researched 10 wide receivers that I think the Bills could realistically trade for. Luka has not seen this list. I'm going to go through the reasoning. We'll do them one by one, and Luka's going to react to the player, the fit, the financial implications, and we're going to talk through it. Now, look, right off the bat, folks, if the Bills trade for Justin Jefferson, you would see 2 Justin Jefferson Bills jerseys on the very next episode. I can promise you that. And Luka loves him so much, there'd probably be a picture behind him the next time we record. I would be elated if they signed Justin Jefferson, if they traded for him. But realistically speaking, he's a 26-year-old superstar who's on the road to Canton, and it would cost the Vikings $45 million in dead cap. They would essentially have to pay $45 million to make Justin Jefferson go away. Ask yourself, if you were the Vikings, if you would do that. for a guy who, unlike some of the guys we're going to talk about tonight, has not had off-field issues, has been one of the good guys in the league at the receiver position, no less. And really just no warts in his game, no warts in his personality. Really everything you hope you're getting on draft night is Justin Jefferson. So maybe the Vikings, for whatever reason that is unbeknownst to us, are willing to pay $45 million in dead cap to make him go away. But he is not going to be included on this list as much as Luka and I would love the idea of Justin Jefferson being included. But we're going to start it off now, Luka. And I will say this. I formulated my list really by what I think the Bills need. I think the Bills need a boundary receiver. And so I'm not going to be looking at somebody who lines up primarily in the slot. I think they need an X, somebody to be what they've been trying to make Keon Coleman. And somebody, if they can take the top off a defense, fantastic. Number one, a lot of talk this offseason has been about signing Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts. I'm a fan of that idea. I think, if you can't make a big trade, Alec Pierce has a very good skill set, underutilized skill set in Indy because of the quarterback inconsistencies. Very good deep ball receiver, good route runner. You saw that with Phillip Rivers when he came in, had to work the intermediate. Reading the tea leaves out of Indianapolis, Luka, I get the sense that the Colts are much more likely to keep Alec Pierce and then turn around and trade Michael Pittman, who is going into the last year of his deal with the Colts. And that is going to be the first name on our list. Michael Pittman Jr., 28 years old. If the Bills were to trade for him right now, it would be a $24 million cap hit. For the Colts to trade him, it's a very, very stomachable $5 million dead cap. And he is a 70% wide receiver as far as lining up out wide. So he definitely fits the prototype the Bills are looking for. And why would they do this? Well, they would sign Pierce. They have Josh Downs coming up for a contract, and they drafted a future superstar in Tyler Warren last year. And maybe they're starting to feel that Pittman is being phased out in the order of weapons on their roster, and it's a replaceable person for them. And they can get an asset for somebody going into the last year of his deal. How does the Michael Pittman Jr. idea sit with you, Luka?
Ooh, we're starting with a real hard hitter here. Not someone that I believe truly moves the needle enough. What I believe Michael Pittman to be one of the best 2 or 3 receivers on the roster if they were to move for him? Yes. Would I believe that he could be a target man for this team enough to be depended on and leaned on to elevate the pass game? That's where I have my doubts. My key thing here is when I look at receivers, if you are going to make a trade to grab a receiver, and I'm sure this theme will continue as just for anyone that understands, I truly have no idea where Josh is going. I did not think Michael Pittman was going to be number 1 off the board, although had a sneaky suspicion he'd be one of the 10.
And these are not in any order, by the way.
Yeah.
Just for reference.
Well, if you're doing Michael Pittman, I would hope to God it's not in any order. Michael Pittman, just the one key thing, going back to it, is separation, elite route running, things of that nature. When I look at Michael Pittman, that does not scream to me someone that is a separator in the NFL, someone who is known to be able to create space through high-end route running capabilities and stuff of that. Michael Pittman, I think, would be a better contested catcher than most of the other pass catchers on this roster, Keon Coleman included. But I think even the Keon Coleman dynamic has made us question if that's the style of receiver we want for Josh Allen to have on this roster, and for Bean and this front office to kind of pseudo double down on that style of receiver. I think that would not encourage Josh Allen to trust the passing game, and you need Josh Allen to be comfortable with that. And he definitely, whether it's right or wrong, has a comfort level where he would much rather prefer to see someone looking like they have the ability to get open to then be able to throw to them, even in contested situations. Michael Pittman does not move the needle enough, if at all, for me to even want to explore moving legitimate assets. And by legitimate, I'm not talking a first round pick or anything. I mean, just you are moving assets to acquire this player. I don't
Mhm.
see where that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm giving this one a big thumbs down. I think the player's good enough to be in this conversation, but to Luca's point, he's not an alpha. He's very much somebody that would be part of the group, but I think would still be reliant on Kincaid to still be the guy that carries the water for this group. And there's just a couple of things that don't line up for me with Pittman. He's going to be 29 in October, and he's going into the last year of his deal. If you trade for him, that $24 million cap hit has to be adjusted. But the only way you can adjust a cap hit on a player on the last year of his deal is extending his contract. And I'm not overly interested in extending Michael Pittman at the wide receiver market value at the age 29, locking into age 30, age 31, age 32 of Michael Pittman. So I think we're seeing eye to eye there. Um, I think maybe my favorite idea on the list is coming up next. Same division, Brian Thomas Jr. out of Jacksonville, a 24-year-old player. He is going into year 3 of his rookie deal. Now, year 1 looked like he was about to take the league by storm, especially when Mac Jones was playing quarterback for the Jaguars. He was taking the top off of the defense. Luka loved him coming out of the draft. I was not as high on him. And then when I saw him at the NFL level, I was like, holy cow, this guy translates to the NFL. Year 2, very much a head scratcher. This was a guy that started showing some of the inconsistent hands that I thought plagued him at LSU, but also just was not a target focus in this offense. Liam Cohen came in, and it wasn't the Brian Thomas show. And that wasn't a guy they drafted. And in fact, when they traded for Jacoby Myers at the trade deadline, Brian Thomas Jr. fell down the pecking order. So did Diami Brown. The emergence of Washington, their young receiver, they drafted Travis Hunter in the top 3 last year in the draft, and he's a wide receiver. I think you could see a situation where Brian Thomas Jr. is starting to get phased out. He's an 80% out wide receiver. And my favorite thing about this, the rookie deal, you still have 2 more years of very cheap labor, 2.23 million against the cap for the Bills this year, only cost the Jaguars 3.7 to trade away. I think because of all of that, this would be expensive from a compensation standpoint, and the Jaguars aren't dumb. They know what free agency and the draft looks like. I think it's very realistic. They could come to the Bills and say, you better give us your first pick in this draft. Maybe we'll throw you a day 3 pick as a sweetener. But Brian Thomas Jr., Luka, how does that idea sit with you?
2 thumbs up. Brian Thomas Jr. is absolutely near the top of the list of potential trade targets this offseason. I mean, he just checks so many boxes where you talk about age, ability, capabilities as well when it comes to just what they can be utilized as. It's funny when it comes to Brian Thomas Jr. You mentioned his primary boundary receiver capabilities and everything like that. 100% agree, but there is a part of his athleticism where he doesn't need to be fixed to anything either. And that is something that I think is viewed in a positive light within this building and this organization. We've heard obviously the joke that is everyone eats or everyone starves at times. But then also, if you go back a couple years ago, I felt like the entire offseason, our conversation and the message had been felt across the board was more talking about kind of utilizing people, as offensive weapons rather than just fixed positions. And I do believe Brian Thomas Jr. has the capability to be shuffled around a little bit depending on, what the game script demands. And he is just a supreme athlete, a great receiver, as we've seen, even with the run that he had his rookie year in the NFL level, that I would be absolutely comfortable enough with pretty much, I don't want to say pretty much any, but most realistic asks of what the Jags would be asking for in return for a Brian Thomas Jr. at this point. As you said, a first plus maybe a day 3 sweetener or whatever it is. I don't see how that, especially considering what the possibilities could be in this draft in comparison. Um, when you have Josh Allen, when you have the situation that you are in, bringing in a BTJ just sounds much more appetizing for the now and future, for that matter. That, yeah, two thumbs up. This is a move I absolutely believe they should heavily explore.
And it gives you the runway to see how he fits in with your mix. You have 2 years left after this season with the Bills. They would have to make a decision on the 5th-year option, but really 3 years if you include the option, and, by then, who knows what your team even looks like. So, I agree. This is one of my favorite moves on the board, and I think it's realistic for both teams to be exploring it. This next move, I think I would love it. A lot of Bills fans would love it. Not as convinced the team involved is going to move this player, but his name comes up enough, and because of who the Bills signed as their wide receiver coach, who used to coach over this team, we're going to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of the same aspects that we like about Brian Thomas Jr. going into year 3 of his rookie deal, a guy that, unlike Brian Thomas Jr., has really to this point underperformed. And I think what was most noteworthy, not just the 5 games missed in 2025, but when Jacoby Brissett came in and really improved the throwing of the football from the quarterback position, it wasn't Marvin Harrison Jr. who took off. It was Michael Wilson who took off. So I think a lot of people are connecting the dots that, oh, Michael Wilson is now the wide receiver 1. The Cardinals might be having buyer's remorse on Marvin Harrison. If they can flip him for a 1, they'll do it. I'm not still convinced that they're ready to let him go. But for a lot of the same reasons, it would, he was picked higher in the draft than Thomas. So it would be 4 million against the cap, 11 dead for the Cardinals. That's not nothing, but it's virtually nothing. You can spread that out. Financially, it makes sense. The Bills should be all in if his name gets floated out there in the GM group chat. But I guess this one loses me a little bit with I don't see why the Cardinals would want to do it.
It's definitely one where you have to question if, as you're saying, the Cardinals are going to be the team that truly wants to do it. Let me first speak in a vacuum when it comes to the player. I believe there is still a lot about Marvin Harrison's game that just for whatever reason is not capable of showing itself at the NFL level. I will say that I don't believe there is any way for him to be viewed as the best receiver of his own class, even at this point. I think that unless something's going on with the ACL injury that Malik Neighbors is dealing with, Malik Neighbors is absolutely going to be viewed as, probably for the foreseeable future, as the best receiver of the class, rightfully so. What I will add to is, you mentioned the point of Michael Wilson really exploding and coming to the scene once Jacoby Brissett was named starter. And I will say the caveat to it is named starter, because I feel like when he was in there originally as injury relief for Kyler, it still was kind of on the fence as to what the passing game truly was. But you did notice a little bit of a change once it felt like Kyler was being placed on IR. I'm doing air quotes here, and they moved forward with Jacoby Brissett as just the foreseeable future starter. And then next thing you know, he's throwing 57 attempts against the Niners midway through the season. Marvin Harrison Jr. is being forgotten about. That even his drop issues, inability to be on the same page as a quarterback, all of these things did kind of disappear once Jacoby Brissett was also under center. Don't forget that Marvin Harrison Jr. did have some good games under there. The one that I recall the most is I believe it was a Monday night game in Dallas, where Marvin Harrison Jr. absolutely showed that he's still, a quality receiver. And I believe he finished with close to 100 yards and a score in that game. Everything was going well for him there. And then following that, I believe, is when he got hurt, and it kind of never really reappeared again after that point. Marvin Harrison, all in all, I'm going to give this one a 1 thumbs up. My caution is, I worry there's intangible things about players that I look for and I like. And you hear the term used a lot, need dogs out there. You want a dog. I do have questions on if Marvin Harrison truly has that dog in him. And it's such a weird thing to say, but I will just add, it just feels there is times where you want emotions to be set aside for a player and things like that and whatnot. When Marvin Harrison Jr. is out there and gets, 6 targets, only 3 catches, and also has registered 3 drops and seems to not be capable of catching the open and easy ones, and then just jogs to the sideline like nothing happened, the motivation, drive, and desire to be the best out there is something I want my number one to be. And I don't know what it is, but I still don't know if that exists within him. And that's my biggest point of issue with. And it's such an intangible thing that it's not like we can sit here and run a test on him to know if emotionally he has the capabilities to do it. But that's my number one, because I think the talent is absolutely there. I just is the desire and care to be the best also there. And it's very strange for that to be the son of a Hall of Fame and all-time great, for him to kind of feel like maybe he's just going through the motions at times, or nonchalant, or doesn't care that he's having a bad game. It's just the evidence also shows that feels like you could say there's a case for that more so than the contrast. So talent, age, ability, all of that, I believe, is the reason I give it a thumbs up. I just don't put that second thumb up only because there's just doubts on if he truly has that gear in him and that emotional capability that you want from a true number one, that I do think is important, especially when you're trying to do things with Josh Allen. And I'm going to be quite frank, I think Josh Allen wants dogs out there with him. I think he wants guys who are emotionally willing to go to battle for him and with him. And maybe a steady Eddie would be good out wide for him rather than the contrary. But I'm going to be honest, when I watched then a Malik Neighbors, as I mentioned before, be an absolute monster, and, the emotions are high, and he absolutely wills his way to making catch after catch and just dominant play after dominant play. There's a reason that seems to be an attribute in a player that I also enjoy and would say is required. And I just don't see it right now with Marvin Harrison Jr.
The Bills do have intel on him should he become available. Drew Terrell was the wide receiver coach in Arizona last year, so maybe they would rely on him to sign off on that. I agree with you, though. His dad was a quiet player, too. Marvin Harrison was, like, notorious for being kind of like Curtis Martin, where he just handed the ball to the ref and, like, didn't really show off, and it was weird in that era of football when, the Ocho Cincos and the Steve Smiths were starting to get crazy with their end zone dances. He was scoring as much as anybody and just never, ever doing anything crazy. But yeah, that would excite me. I'm like wanting to put the second thumb up, but I can't get quite as excited as I would about Brian Thomas Jr. All right, there is 2 more guys that are on the fifth on their rookie deal I want to get to. I do believe this guy here is a class below what we've talked about in the last 2 players with Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison. But I do think there's some untapped potential here. Jordan Addison. He was taken in the same draft class as Dalton Kincaid, 24 years old, going into year 4 of his rookie deal. So if you do trade for him, you have to make the decision on the 5th-year option. I'm assuming that if you give up meaningful assets for him, I would assume like a couple day 3 picks, maybe a day 2 and a day 3 pick. That would even seem kind of heavy. You'd probably be willing to pick up that option. Jordan Addison has never taken the league by storm, but when he's been on the field, he's been an explosive player. The problem with him right now is he can't stay out of legal trouble. And, to his defense, and there's no defense for driving 150 and a 55, and there's no defense for having a DUI. There is no defense. And I almost want to have like the to his defense thing back. But to me, that's bad decision making. That's immaturity. And I sure hope people in his life are talking to him, not just from like a football, like life changing money standpoint, but like, let's not have your life end early by a dumb decision. That's not like controllable anger management. Like you see him putting his hands on a woman, kind of issues. And so maybe you want to give him some leeway for being young and thinking, I don't know, maybe, but Jordan Addison would cost the Bills $2.6 million against the cap. That's perfectly ideal. The Vikings, if they're wanting to get rid of him, would only cost them 1.7 against the cap. You do get him cheap in 2026 before that fifth-year option kicks in. You have that runway of one season to try him out in your system. He is a 78% out wide receiver, so he would fit the bill, no pun intended in that regard. To me, this one feels like if you can't get one of the big dogs, maybe then you kind of look at Jordan Addison. But this is even one that I wouldn't want to be giving up my first round pick. That's for sure. Maybe this is one that if you go like edge in the first round of the draft, you're calling the Vikings on Friday and saying, "Hey, what do you want for Jordan Addison?" That's kind of where I'm seeing it. What does this idea say to you?
Yeah, it's a price if the price is right. I like the idea of Jordan Addison over, let's say, Michael Pittman for now. Jordan Addison is someone that could provide a different dynamic to the receiver room than what we had this past season. I think Jordan Addison has proven that he has capabilities for big plays, something that I honestly even questioned going into his draft class. It's well documented on our channel. He was able to provide actual evidence at the NFL level that big plays are capable with him. And I would say when it comes to the person that is the player, I have lesser concerns only because he's not going to be the first 20-year-old that has a DUI, or he wasn't the first 20-year-old to have a DUI. He's not going to be the last 20-year-old to DUI. Unfortunately, immature people make immature decisions all the time. That is just, human nature. Take it for what it is. It's not excusing it. It's just the reality of, I don't know, I guess the way to put it is existence. We're not talking about something much more serious in regards to other things that have even taken place recently in the NFL landscape that definitely deserves more of a microscope and concern too. It's worth taking the shot if the price is right. I honestly give this a single thumbs up. I like, again, I look at it as strictly from a football perspective. He would be able to provide something different that is positive to this receiver room. And to me, that is, if you are going to acquire someone, that should be the primary objective. Who can provide something different that elevates the receiver room? And Jordan Addison absolutely has the capabilities to do that in a different manner than anyone else in that room, and has a track record to prove it. So, as long as the price is right, I don't see an issue with going out there and acquiring Jordan Addison whatsoever.
All right, the last guy on his rookie deal is going into his fifth-year option. It is wide receiver Chris Olave from the New Orleans Saints. The Bills were tied to him like many teams at the trade deadline. He ultimately didn't move. That's where this gets tricky, is you do wonder if the Saints were planning on moving him. They could have gotten more value by trading him at the deadline to give teams half a season with him plus this year. Would they even have the appetite to trade him? Well, what would cause that? Maybe they start having contract negotiations and they realize he just doesn't want to be there. Chris Olave is excellent when he's on the field. 3 of his 4 years in the NFL have been for more than 1,000 yards. The problem is he's missed 10 games in his short career, and it's not just like small injuries. He's got a concussion history. He missed 9 in 2024 due to concussions. That's scary. That's a scary like Tua level of concussion games missed. In 2025, he had a blood clot in his lung. Just a guy that's taken an absolute beating in the NFL. Now, he hasn't had the best quarterback play, and holy cow, if you've seen some pictures of quarterbacks just leaving him out to dry, I think the player, Chris Olave, would solve a lot for these Buffalo Bills. I would worry about, with 1 year left on his deal, and let's talk about what the financials would look like here for the Bills. Chris Olave would cost the Bills $15 million in cap. It'd be 0 dead cap for the Saints, so it does make sense there. I would imagine that this is a sign and trade for the Bill, or trade and sign, where you trade for him, get him on the roster, and you immediately extend him to massage that $15 million down, get him on a 3 or 4 year actual deal, maybe a 5-year like fake deal, and just see where it goes. I like the player a lot. I'm not in love with the durability factor, particularly with some of the games missed there. But how do you feel about the Chris Olave idea?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is you're not exactly acquiring a guy at a good value point. If you were to just look at it like a stock market situation, he's coming off a season where after 156 targets, he had 100 catches for 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns, all of which are career highs. You're going to have to pay him the max dollar you most likely would in his career. You would be able to bring to the table his health concerns, of course. That would naturally be something that's unavoidable, but ultimately, for what would be a 26-year-old receiver, which is not old by any stretch of the imagination, you're going to be paying top dollar for that. Um, I think that's the only point of contention I have with it, though. I think the player's skill set is phenomenal. I think size, speed, capabilities, ability to play the outside, everything of that such. I think he does all the things you want in this receiver room. It's just, what lingers in the back of your head is just, will he be available enough? And that's one where he wouldn't be the top of the list. He wouldn't be, 1, 2, or 3, probably even to me, but he's someone that I'm absolutely willing to call and, test the market on and see what the cost would be, see what a contract number would look like, go through the steps to see, if you're not getting your top 2 guys in the trade market or whatever it is. I have no qualms or issue with bringing in going for, and then ultimately trading and signing a Chris Olave. I think he could provide a lot for this offense. It's just, you're going to be, I feel like early on, it'll just be waiting for the inevitable, and hopefully that would never come. But it will be so hard to look past that for at least the near future if they were to acquire Chris Olave. I'll give it a thumbs up. I'll even say that I definitely have 2 thumbs in mind. It's just the concussion problem, something that can linger of that nature. And then also on top of it, just, it's not like Chris Olave isn't in a tier with, the elite dogs in this game. And yet you're still going to have to kind of get them at their highest point of value, that it's kind of like you're not trading for value right now. You're just trading for need and borderline desperation of the receiver room, that I'm not quite willing to say that it would be a 2 thumbs up kind of move for me.
And unlike the rest of the names on this list, he is the lowest of the 10 when it comes to wide percentage. He is only out wide 61%. Now, the Bills could use him however they want, but that is a historical mark for him. That's a little lower than I would like. So 5 down, 5 to go. Some of these we can probably blow through a little bit quicker. This next one, I think, is the ultimate step up to the plate, swing as hard as you can. Do you want to hit a home run? Do you want to win a Super Bowl? But are you willing to risk it all for everything? George Pickens from the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he is, by all accounts, going to be franchise tagged by the Cowboys. Ian Rappaport got his name added to my list today because he came out and said that he expects the price for trading for George Pickens to be a 2nd-round pick. Now, for the Bills, $28 million against the cap, but that's just to fit him on your roster. You almost certainly have to extend him at that point, because George Pickens would be a very unhappy guy if he doesn't get a new contract extension. He was excellent last year, 1,400 yards. Size, speed, explosion, everything you want. And again, Luka referenced our draft episodes. When it's good, it's as good as anybody in the sport. We talked about this, but Luka refused to put a 1st-round grade on him coming out of the draft for some of the negative reasons I'll let you get into. This does not come without risk, both off the field and on, as far as effort goes. If this one hits, Luka, this is a Super Bowl championship level move. But if this one has maybe the biggest strikeout potential too, especially considering what you would have to give up.
This is the definition of high ceiling, low floor. This is the absolute definition and antithesis of, you are taking the biggest swing possible, but you could absolutely just land flat on your face and look like a clown if it were to not work out. I agree with your sentiment real quick that if you were to trade for him while he's on the tag, you most certainly are going to have to work out some sort of contract agreement. He doesn't seem like the kind of individual who will be overly thrilled to play on a tag. And also it just feels weird to, give up legitimate assets to then have a 1-year rental. If that was the plan all along in the first place, especially for how much that would cost you. A second definitely tickles me in the right way. I feel like that intrigues me enough that it's like, if that's truly what it feels like the value is, we're talking business. Um, yeah, that if you could just take the emotions, I talked about emotions being asked for Marvin Harrison Jr. If you could find the median between George Pickens and Marvin Harrison Jr., but then leave the, ability of George Pickens as it is, I think you'd have a supreme receiver in this league. He is an absolute head case. He is all over the place. That is the George Pickens experience. Now, would it be truly intriguing to watch the George Pickens experience collide with the Josh Allen experience? Absolutely. I will give this 2 thumbs up. I'm going to be honest.
Wow.
I
I
think
was
Josh
expecting you not to like it.
Josh, I knows I am not the biggest fan of George Pickens, the person, and think he is an absolute loon and all of those things. Guess what? It doesn't matter how crazy you are. We have seen Antonio Brown at his peak of Looney Tune-ness still win championships. Great players are needed for this team. And if you're telling me a second round pick is what it would take to bring a George Pickens in, and you can make the finances work, I mean, that is going to be a huge part of this too. There is a lot of cap juggling that will have to happen, which is possible for the Bills to make a number of George Pickens ability happen. If you can do it though, I'm all for it. I think George Pickens absolutely provides you all the different things you need of a boundary receiver. His ability is just skyrocketing through the roof. And I am all about buying into the high ceiling. And at this point in time, I really hope that the Diggs time in Buffalo doesn't, make a Brandon Beane cautious about emotionally unstable receivers in the receiver room, because it's not apples to apples, and I think what George Pickens did last season to me is probably what got me on his side a little bit. Being traded by Pittsburgh, going to Dallas, not being the number one guy unless CeeDee Lamb was hurt, of course, and still managing through all of that, putting through incredible feats of effort, even after CeeDee Lamb came back from injury also. I think he sold me on he can truly let his football speak for him at times, and you just have to corral the individual that is George Pickens as best as you humanly possibly can. And I think having a young head coach might actually help that in a weird way. That I'll give it 2 thumbs up. I love the idea of George Pickens being a Buffalo Bill, I will say.
24 years old, so his NFL life is very much in front of him. This is everything you'd want in a player, and you just have to trust what you've built here in Buffalo, culture wise, to keep him reined in. And you and I, we've both watched this league enough. I don't mind a wide receiver with a personality. I don't mind a wide receiver that gets frustrated when he's not getting the ball. It's when that frustration boils over into distraction, like a guy we might be talking about in a little bit. That's when it could become a problem. But who knows? Maybe paying George Pickens and making him know that you believe in him, and then giving him a future Hall of Fame quarterback is exactly what it takes to get the best out of him. And the best, if you get something more than what Dallas got out of him, holy cow. I'd be interested for sure. Even if the Bills have to give up their one, because if you're getting into a bidding war of second round picks, the Bills is 26th in the second round. If you could make the financials work, which they should be able to, you get them on the books, and then Bean can give him a 6-year deal. The first 3 years pretty light. Throw some void years on there whenever Josh Allen's going to be like 38 years old, and it doesn't matter anyway. And go win a chip. All right. Let's get a couple non-sexy ideas out of the way. George Pickens will carry us over through these next two. DJ Moore is, by the way, George Pickens 92% out wide. Chef's kiss. DJ Moore from the Chicago Bears is a former number one receiver in this league, has some Carolina lineage. He definitely wouldn't have played for John Fox. Doesn't go back that far, but 29 years old. This would cost the Bills $24.5 million against the cap. It would cost the Bears $12 million in dead cap to get rid of him. So why would they do it? Well, last year in the draft, they drafted Luther Burden, who looks like a future star. Earlier in that draft, they drafted Colston. Yeah, I know. Who would have seen that coming? They drafted Colston Loveland, who looks like a absolute future star. And the year before, they drafted Roma Odunze in the first round, top 10 picks. And so, that's a lot of targets going to a lot of young players, and DJ Moore could be phased out. This to me is not a move the Bills would need to give up a premium pick. I think this is almost like a classic day 3 of the draft pick swap kind of deal, just to free up some space on their end, maybe a post June trade kind of deal. The player DJ Moore has not been overly explosive. Now, he in 2023 had 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. I believe that was with Justin Fields as his quarterback. And then the last couple of years, he's kind of fallen down the pecking order in Chicago, only had 682 last year. What do you think about the DJ Moore idea?
DJ Moore to me is the kind of guy that I would have been way more excited about if they traded for him at the deadline.
Yeah.
He was the what do we call it? He was the desperation. We need something dynamic and different in this receiver room. Now that we're in the offseason, it's like, does it really make sense financially to bring in a DJ Moore who, as you said, in 2023 had a peak season? Let's remember, yes, it was with Justin Fields. 230 yards and 3 touchdowns came in one Thursday night game against the Washington football team, I think at the time. And like when you really look under the hood with DJ Moore, he is like the biggest flash in the pan kind of receiver. He has physical attributes and capabilities that make you excited, but then also you just really are leaving games scratching your head wondering, why is he incapable of being consistent? And that has followed him his entire career. I mean, there's a reason we mentioned 2023 as the noteworthy season, because it feels like since then, you just really haven't been able to see anything out of this guy. So I honestly give this a single thumbs down. It's not a Michael Pittman. I just truly don't understand it, but I just don't, like you said, the amount of asset you'll have to turn into DJ Moore is very minimal, it feels like. But at the end of the day, is this truly the answer you need? I have my doubts. He does have a different dynamic value to him than anyone else in the receiver room that I would be intrigued by it still. But again, I would have been way more excited about this if they traded for him at the deadline, let's say last season, than I would be now in the offseason, because then to me, the message would still be like, hey, this is our fix to the receiver problem. And I'm like, too inconsistent for me to be over the moon excited about it. And I have my doubts that it'll actually work out. So, he, at this point, he has to be, I don't know, in his late 20s, if
29.
if not approaching 30. So you just enough doubts for me to be like a single thumbs down. I'm not going to be overly upset if they were to make a move for him, but yeah, it's not someone that I would definitely be comfortable enough saying I got a thumbs up for.
And I think the fact that it's going to be 24 million against the cap, and he's under contract for the next 4 years, although all his guarantees are up after 2026. For that amount of money, and I say this fully seriously, I'd rather just re-sign Brandon Cooks and probably get similar production out of him than pay that kind of money for DJ Moore. Okay, another not very sexy idea, but cap-wise, it makes a lot of sense. 27-year-old Jerry Jeudy, who's been in Cleveland now for the past 3 seasons. It would cost the Browns $10 million in dead cap to trade him. He would only cost $1.5 million against the salary cap for the Buffalo Bills. So from a financial standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. I am not a Jerry Jeudy fan. I think his hands are inconsistent. I don't think he's an explosive player in the NFL. I think he's just good enough to tease you, but not nearly consistent enough to be anybody you can rely on. The $1.5 million against the cap, though, I mean, that caught my attention as if they're going to give him away, I mean, we could do a lot worse than wide receiver 4 or 5 as Jerry Jeudy. But as any kind of answer, I think I'm out on this idea.
He is only on the radar because of that 1.5 million. Let me be brutally honest in my own take on that. I think there is so many problems with Jerry Jeudy, the player. If you were promising me Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama and the potential, I'd be all for it. Unfortunately, potential doesn't always pan out, and Jerry Jeudy is an excellent case of that exact thing. I just We've had 6 seasons of Jerry Jeudy now, 4 in Denver, 2 in Cleveland, to understand that his hands just seem to be not capable of catching a ball consistently at all at this level. And he just always leaves you wanting more. I mean, it's when you look at his numbers, I'm going to read these numbers out loud. This is all of his seasons. 113 targets, 52 receptions, 56 targets, 38 receptions, 100 targets, 67 receptions, 87 targets, 54 receptions, 145 targets, 90 receptions, 106 targets, 50 receptions. Now, you can point to some quarterbacks being not the greatest in that entire stretch, but I would like a number one receiver to have a hit rate that is greater than 50%, which is not what we saw last year. No matter who's it's Shador, it's Dylan Gabriel, it's whoever throwing you the ball. I don't give a shit. It needs to be over 50% of a hit rate. That is unacceptable to me. 1.5 million is the only reason I even remotely entertain this idea. I'll give it a single thumbs down just because that financial situation may be too good to be true, because you could probably still get him for almost pennies on the dollar.
Honestly, even though it's 1.5 million against it, let's say you get him for a 4th round pick, I'd almost rather just spend that 4th round pick on a rookie receiver and see what you have.
I'm talking 7th round pick.
Yeah, exactly. All right. These next 2 guys on the list played college at the exact same school at the exact same time, and the Bills drafted neither of them, instead opted for Cody Ford. The first one on the list is DK Metcalf. Now, why would DK Metcalf be available? Well, he signed a contract extension in Pittsburgh after an aggressive trade, but ultimately Mike Tomlin stepped down because he left amicably, and they hired Mike McCarthy. Now, I think a lot of this will depend on, do they keep Aaron Rodgers? Are they still looking at a win now window? Or do the Steelers do what their fans have been begging for the last 10 years and really tear it down and build it up the right way? And if that is the plan, then someone like DK Metcalf could become available. Don't love his age, 29 years old. Don't love his cap hit, 25 million, 24 million in dead cap for the Steelers. So there's a lot of wiggle room that would be needed on both sides to make this work. I think DK Metcalf is an exciting player at times. I think he's pretty linear with his speed. I don't think he runs a great route tree. I don't think he's a number one in the NFL. I don't love this idea. What say you?
2 thumbs down. He is not a number one receiver in this league. He would not answer any of your questions. The only thing he would be giving you is field stretching that ultimately is probably being caught at a clip rate sub 15%. And you're just wondering, what the hell? Why can't Josh Allen and DK Metcalf get on the same page? I will say the caveat and asterisk to this is it feels like Aaron Rodgers might actually come back to Pittsburgh for another year. And if that's the case, I definitely don't think Pittsburgh's even remotely trying to trade DK Metcalf, but that would be great news to me, because I also don't think there's any sort of situation that makes sense to trade for DK Metcalf. I don't think he would provide you anything other than frustration most of the time. That I don't see the fit. I don't see the reasoning. It just, not a fan of the player. I don't think he has anything you're looking for when it comes to a true number one, because he's never been able to be a true number one. Yeah, no, 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, we see eye to eye on that one. His college teammate, A.J. Brown, is the last name on this list, and I think he's the most talked about name so far at the trade deadline, this offseason, just because of how vocal he's been about wanting to get out of Philadelphia. When I looked at this on Spot Track, I was stunned to see it would be a $43 million cap hit for the Eagles. They're going to have to get creative with that, because Howie Roseman is not somebody that's going to just jack up his cap to make a disgruntled player happy. So whatever team trades for him is probably going to have to get creative in taking on some of that money too, I would assume. But 29 years old, it would only be $7 million against the cap if the Eagles are truly desperate and just want to get him off the roster. Off the roster. What do you think about A.J. Brown, 29 years old, as a solution for the Bills?
5 thumbs up. I can't express my love enough for this move. Oh, and I put into that equation that I absolutely believe the Eagles are going to be actively trying to shop A.J. Brown, get him out of the house. This is a offseason for the Eagles where they need to reshift focus within the building, make sure there's an understanding of what the singular focus is. And I don't believe that AJ Brown is someone that's going to be able and capable of sharing that vision with the rest. Eagles need to be able to buy into the fact that what they are is what they are, and what they are is not someone that is going to utilize AJ Brown enough for him to be even remotely happy. And AJ Brown checks every single MF box that I want a number one receiver to be: an athletic freak, a dominant force of nature out there wide. And I feel like there's definitely a decent number of Bills fans out there that don't care for the AJ Brown idea. And I definitely think that's attitude driven, off-field drama, whatever you want to call it. I think it's only highlighted because of the Eagles and where they've been in position season after season. And then also just highlighted by the gimmicky nature at times of AJ Brown's ways of going about it. I think it's quirky, to be quite honest. I think it's a lot more lighthearted than what we've seen in the past out of receivers in these situations. And then it's like, well, then we're going to have to spam him the ball. Good.
Yeah.
Please do. Oh, you have AJ Brown out there that you need to make sure gets his 10 plus targets a game. What a shame. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you have killed to have that going into Jacksonville, going into Denver, hopefully after that going into New England? Like, I can't conceptualize the negative feeling towards we have to spam AJ Brown. The things that spamming AJ Brown can do for Josh Allen, James Cook, the run game, other receivers, everyone else on that roster, it's benefits to me. It's positives. It's everything we need and miss for this team. I'll give it 5 thumbs up. I could give it 6. I could give it 10. I don't care. It is going into this offseason my absolute favorite idea, only because the thing that tips it over Jay Jets, as you even caveat opened with this program, are the Vikings going to be willing to move Jay Jets? Whereas I believe the Eagles are absolutely looking to move AJ Brown, so that it feels way more realistic that it could happen. And I am 1,000 billion million % on board for this idea.
Just from a football standpoint, when you think about how well the Bills can run the ball, and when you think about what Josh Allen does to put stress on a defense, now if you put a guy out wide like AJ Brown that really requires 2 guys to cover him and can beat you deep, the Bills offense becomes almost impossible to stop unless they're having an off day. AJ Brown probably would have caught the ball that Brandon Cooks didn't come down with. Just putting that out there. All right. Well, Luka, this was fun. 10 names. 10 wide receiver ideas. There's other names out there, other positions. Max Crosby's been floated out there. The Bills are going to have to rebuild their defense. Could they be looking at a safety to pair next to Cole Bishop? Could they be looking at a downhill linebacker? Time will tell. But I thought this would be a fun exercise just to see, it's always fun to say, hey, trade for this guy. Hey, trade for that guy. Hey, trade for Justin Jefferson. But let's look under the hood a little bit. Let's figure out, if you're the Vikings, would you realistically do that? I thought this was a good way to look at it. And hopefully you all learned something along the way. If there's any names we forgot, let us know. I will tell you, I purposely left off Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle. I think you heard enough at the deadline that they weren't truly looking to send those guys within the division. And until I see otherwise, I'm just going to continue to do that. Anyway, Luka, anything before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited for the future direction and the fun of the offseason to begin. We talk about how much we love draft season. This might be a weird one that it's going to have a little bit of I'll call it a sour taste, just because you even mentioned it before as well. This might not be the most exciting draft to go into, but the offseason is always fun because the prospect of potential in future, what a team or any team could look like, and the NFL landscape will be shaped up to, is always an exciting thing. So very much looking forward to it.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to our next episode, and looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. Let us know who we forgot. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Also, we appreciate if you do that on Spotify and Apple. Leave us a review. We'd appreciate that. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty, and we will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.